Greetings, Vault Hunters, and welcome to Echoes from the Borderlands, the podcast where we explore the iconic Borderlands franchise through conversations with the writers, devs, artists, and others who are responsible for its creation and its success. I'm your host, Joel Watson, and today we are talking about the game that gave us Handsome Jack, Tiny Tina, and made Borderlands a franchise, Borderlands 2. I'm joined by boss designer Josh Jeffcoat, lead writer Anthony Birch, and lead cinematics designer Brian Thomas. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Howdy.
What's up?
Okay. Borderlands 2, released September 18th, 2012, on 360, PS3, and PC, has a Metascore of 91, well-loved. It received universal acclaim upon release. Critics generally praised the game's visuals, writing, and gameplay, and online multiplayer, and its variety of guns. Those are all nice superlatives. But you guys were there, and I wasn't. So what I want to know, I want to peel back the scabs of pain and see what's beneath. Let's talk about where we were after Borderlands 1 and how we got to Borderlands 2. Borderlands 1 is a surprise hit. Is that safe to say? After did each of you work on BL1? Josh, you did.
I did about 1 hour of work on Borderlands 1.
I worked on Borderlands 1.
I did zero work
and
on
you
Borderlands
did not.
1.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the senior person in the room.
So coming out of Borderlands 1, what were your expectations for a sequel, and when did you know, oh, we're doing this?
I mean, honestly, we were all really happy to be employed at that time because we had like pivoted for the game, you know, in 9 months of just like crazy hell, just redoing everything and getting it together. And then we got over the finish line and it was like, surprise hit, and like the internet was happy with us and this game that we built, and we released the same day that FIFA released. And I remember going to like, we're doing midnight launches, and like everybody showed up for FIFA, and like one guy in the crowd's like, I'm here for Borderlands.
I'm here for both.
So it was really nice to feel that, and then it was like, okay, cool, we're all still employed, that's rad. And now we get to like go do a sequel where like we finally have our heads wrapped around what this is, and we kind of have a game plan of like where we could do a lot better given some actual time this time.
Knowing what the game is supposed to play like before you start a project is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
So it's the foundation, obviously.
Yeah.
Borderlands 1 is it's not just a success in its own right, but it's the trial and error for everything that comes after it.
Yeah, it's the rough and shaggy version, and then this was really the distillation where we like just drilled down to like, okay, we know what's fun, we know what our players actually want to engage with, and we know where we can put meat on the bones this time.
So going into Borderlands 2, let's talk about goals. First and foremost, Anthony, what were your goals for the story?
Not get fired.
Yeah.
All I wanted was for people to come away thinking the story was not that bad. And to do that, I was thinking about what's the focus of the story. So Borderlands had this really clean, simple focus of find the vault, and the characters that you met along the way, at least some of them were fun. And so like, cool. It turns out this franchise is about characters, and it's about really simple goals on the player's behalf that they can chase. So what are the two things that you do in this game? You find vaults, you find loot, and you kill people. The first game was about finding loot, so this one should be about killing somebody. So yeah.
Now, by killing somebody, do you mean killing one somebody? Because this is the game where we shift our focus from an overall. First of all, the antagonist of Borderlands 1 is in a large extent Pandora, and then to a lesser extent your antagonist.
It's supposed to be Commandant Steele.
Yeah,
but I remember when they told me that in the interview, I laughed.
Well.
Which, again, I'm amazed I got hired.
Yeah.
Because they're like, she's the villain, right? I was like, okay. I think she talks like 5 times, but okay, whatever you say.
So the environment you're in, the people around you is antagonistic. In Borderlands 2, we're shifting to
in Pandora. Yeah, okay.
A Pandora, yeah. In Borderlands 2, we're shifting to an antagonist. Someone who doesn't like you, wants you dead, and has opposite goals to yours. Talk about developing that. What led you to Jack, and then once you found him, what was exciting about going forward with him?
So the impetus for Jack was basically so the creative director and I, Paul Hellquist, I'm not Paul Hellquist. Paul Hellquist is creative director. I'm a writer. We're in sort of a meme factory. We shared an office basically and spent a long time breaking down like because Paul Hellquist was the lead designer on BioShock, and BioShock is one of my favorite games of all time. And a big reason for that is because BioShock is very, very villain driven. Like Portal, like System Shock, like BioShock, they're all about, hey, isn't gonna feel good to you, player, to get to this person that's been heckling you the entire game, and then you get to put a bullet in their head. To me, that always feels really good in a game. So the idea was, can we come up with a character that is fun to listen to, that is unlikable, that you eventually grow to hate, but that initially you're like, oh, I want to see what this person is going to say. Essentially, that's where Handsome Jack started, and then a lot of experiments with voice and how can we get a guy to be really, really arrogant.
I read on the internet that Handsome Jack was created to be a charismatic douche.
Yes.
That mirrors Birch's own personality.
No.
Do you think you're charismatic?
No. God, no.
The quote is also, it's douche in quotes, but not charismatic. So it's not a charismatic douche.
No, he's actually, Damian Clark, the voice actor, is actually charismatic.
Charismatic.
Oh, yeah.
The douche is the acting part. But yeah, no, he was supposed to be somebody who's, we basically pitched him as like, what if he's a vault hunter and he's just better than you at being a vault hunter? He's the guy who opened the vault of Pandora and did a bunch of stuff with Iridium and things that didn't end up actually mattering at all in the plot. But like, what if you did a bunch of stuff with Iridium and took control of the world, and you are the last achievement he has to get on his Xbox achievement list is kill these 5 vault hunters. And he's just like, why can't I just, they're so hard to kill. And yeah. To basically have him want the same things that you did, but just at crossroads with each other, was supposed to make him more interesting, because like you like vaults and you like being flippant and you like killing people, and so does Handsome Jack, but he takes it way too far.
There's also a difference in, well, there should be a difference in motivation. When it comes down to it, it's not a lot different, because you still want what's best for you, but you're not necessarily trying to make it terrible for everyone else.
Yeah, the thing about at least Borderlands 2 is that like, I never wanted, or we never wanted to pretend that the player was necessarily out for purely altruistic reasons, because like the things you're doing in the game are like the least altruistic things you could be doing.
Right.
You're murking people and just taking their stuff and going hee 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 and looking at the numbers and like a little gremlin.
Yeah. The core of Borderlands is like, we solve our problem with guns.
Yes, exactly.
Like America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I open that? Shoot it.
Exactly. So the idea was, can we do that, but have you at least feel like, oh, in my quest to just get bigger and better guns, I have sort of accidentally fallen into saving the world. And initially that wasn't very pronounced. It was much more of a just like Handsome Jack telling you you're a piece of shit, and everybody else going like, yeah, you kind of are. And we did before our last round of pickups, we had a lot of feedback from our testers that were like, I kind of feel like I suck in this game because everybody's just telling me that I'm bad and that I'm horrible. And I would love it if anybody just told me thank you, or like that I was cool. So we went back and put a lot of different dialogue that's just like, hey, great job, Vault Hunter. Because otherwise,
it's only claptrap.
Yeah, so it means nothing.
No, there's no NPCs walking around going, hey, you look good today. Did you get
There kind of is.
sleep?
Like, we literally, the Sanctuary NPCs, I did a rewrite on a couple of them to just be like, wow, a Vault Hunter, just to make you feel a little bit more special.
Is that a laser sword?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the vibe.
I also read that Handsome Jack was initially inspired by an interview with Nathan Fillion on Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Yep, absolutely.
I didn't even know that. What?
Yeah, he was just really, really charming in this way that came off as very intentionally arrogant. He was like playing a character.
It's a character, yeah.
Yeah, it was a character. And so I was like, oh my God, this is what we want to do. And then later when I talked to Damian Clark, I was like, yeah, remember we played that interview for you? And he was like, yeah, I ignored that completely. Like, the second you press play on that, I shut off my brain and didn't pay attention to it. And then I did whatever I wanted to do. And I was like, great, because it turned out perfect.
That's awesome. As far as Jack's motivations, does he believe in peace and order or power and wealth?
I don't think he gives a shit. I think he believes in having a good time.
Is that his means to an end?
I think so. I mean, I think his motivations are sort of similar. Like when you're playing a Borderlands game, is your motivation peace and prosperity, or is it wealth?
More stuff.
Yeah.
Is your motivation
I want that number to go
just
up.
number get
yeah,
bigger.
you want
That's
numbers
it.
to go up. Like he wants to basically feel like he's completed 99% of the map, and there's one little piece of the map that's still red, and he wants to turn it blue, and then he'll feel like, I'm complete, and then he'll go on to another planet.
So Jack's character is the impetus for where the story goes. Let's talk about goals for the map and gameplay. What were there restrictions on BL1 that you were able to overcome in Borderlands 2 in terms of scope, in terms of the way you actually play the game?
I mean, well, there were lots of things that Borderlands 1 is a game about being in a desert almost entirely. So we definitely wanted to widen the scope as far as like, we didn't want the whole game to be brown
right
anymore. So we just kind of said, Yeah. So we kind of said like, okay, yeah, there's going to be still some deserts in the game because that's sort of quintessential. I can't even say it. Quintessentially, whatever, Borderlands. But getting out into grasslands or starting the game in the Arctic, it was just nice to just widen the boundaries for like what Borderlands could be sort of visually.
Yeah. It was the same tech. It was the same hardware. Like
Yeah.
we were still on that Xbox 360, PS3 gen restrictions. So I
Yeah.
mean, like literally every kilobyte we had to like squeeze out. But we knew enough from Borderlands 1 about like where we burnt ourselves in some areas to be like, okay, let's redo some of that content so we don't waste all the memory on
Yeah.
stuff that we didn't need to waste it on.
Yeah, it's amazing how much better you can do something the second time.
Yeah.
It's that's the story of the entire game.
Is there anything personally that did you have not a chip on your shoulder, but just a personal, I will do this the way I wanted to do it?
Well, I didn't really work on the first game. I play tested the hell out of
sure.
it.
Still have a chip on. You still
But-
be a dick about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could still look at other people's accomplishments and go,
Yeah.
not good enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking.
I made
Ryan
the
right
really
now.
bad boss fight at the end of BL1,
Yeah.
and you made the really good boss fight at the end of BL2.
Yeah.
Did that
Well-
create personal tension?
No.
Not really. No. Well, you had like 3 weeks to make that.
Yeah, it was one of those. It's like, hey, you do cinematic. Do you want to make the boss fight? I'm like, I sure don't.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll try anyways.
Yeah. The whole ending of Borderlands 1 was just a blind panic.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Steel gets stabbed in her stomach because they gave me 5 minutes of dialogue, and we did not have the time to do like lip sync animation for 5 minutes of dialogue.
That's the right move anyway.
And
I don't
also,
like
like,
that.
nobody really cared about Steel
Yeah.
in most of that plot. So it's just
Yeah.
like she just like goes onto her villainous rant, and it's like, we're just gonna impale her in the
yeah,
middle
like
of this.
great.
3
Move on
words
here.
in, stab.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But I actually joined the Borderlands 2 project about a year into it because I was working on some other stuff that got canceled. And I was a level designer. I had a lot of experience doing weird shit, like weirdly technical stuff. Like normal gameplay, I'm like not that great at it. But if you need me to do something weird or unusual, like I can make it shine.
What's a weird and unusual thing that you made shine?
Like the entire opening sequence to the first Brothers in Arms game, like jumping out of an airplane. Like that's not real gameplay, but like I made that whole sequence with Jeremy Cook.
Yeah. Making bunker vomit weapons for like 60 seconds.
Yeah, like basically the whole bunker fight, it pees cash at you because I'm a child.
Oh my God, I never realized that's what it was.
Yes, that's why it's all the cash is golden yellow and it comes out of the gun that hangs out from beneath it.
Never
It's
occurred to
literally peeing money at you
It never occurred to me.
because I'm
We're all
12
paid
years old.
professionals, folks.
How old were you when you made that decision?
what
25?
30?
30?
28, 29-ish.
like
That's 12.
emotionally 12.
12.
Yeah.
For sure.
You're at least
Yeah.
13, 14 today.
Yeah. But when I came onto the project, it was basically like, hey, we don't want to wait till the very last second to make our big boss fights in the game. And I had about a year and a half to make the 2 large scale bosses in the game, the bunker fight and at the end, the warrior and the Jack fight as well. Robert did the human scale portion, the Jack.
Robert Anderson,
Yeah. And then I did the big giant monster and then all the whole mission set up for all of that. But yeah, I mean, the goal was really like, hey, make sure we have the time to do something interesting or fun. And to kind of go back to what you were saying earlier, like you wanted to create a character that you were going to feel good walking up to and putting a bullet in his head. And it was really important to me to give that experience to the player. And really at the end of your big game, you want a big giant monster fight. And we worked really hard to figure out how to kind of make sure that we still had that personal moment where like, hey, you've killed the big monster thing. Jack is still standing there. He's going off on this long tirade rant where he's just like
Overwritten.
He knows there's nothing left for him. Like this is the end of his road. There's no way he's getting out of it. And he's just, fuck it. You're getting everything I can yell at you now. And it was so important for me to let the player just kind of walk up to you with their favorite gun. He's hacked so that he only has a single health so that any gun that you choose to
tap
pull
on
the
the
trigger will kill him. Like you can end the game exactly in the manner of your choosing.
I remember there were some people that used the very first gun they got at the beginning of the game
Yeah.
to do it, like Jack Sparrow with the 1 bullet kind
Yeah.
of thing. That was fun.
There was originally something that we were trying to do there because that was supposed to be a bookended moment. Because originally at the very start of the game, one of the things that we pitched for character select was you would be Jack in first person holding a gun at all the 4 Vault Hunters in the snow, and you would choose your character by pointing your gun at them and executing them. because the opening cinematic is the train blowing up and everybody kind of getting thrown out into the
Right.
snow.
Well, it was going to be in the train. They were in the
Was
train.
it in the train
Yeah,
when that
they
was
were in
supposed
the
to happen?
train, and
Oh,
you,
you're
gonna fall
you
out.
shot
Yeah,
them and it ejected
and
you out.
yeah, the body gets ejected out into the snow.
And then I had to be Debbie Downer and be like, "Hey, we're doing DLC characters, and like, how do we do this with like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
we
like
can't
eight
we can't
characters?"
modify this later. There's not room to put that many people here. But originally, the game was supposed to be bookended by Jack shooting you in the face at the start, and then you shooting Jack in the face at the end.
What's to happen to you after you've been shot in the face?
You wake up.
Yeah,
You wake up
because
in
the game.
Welcome to video games, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The game starts with you surviving a train crash, basically, waking up in the
Which
snow.
looks far more lethal than getting
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah.
The
in a lot
next
of ways.
iteration of that character select was like, pick your body out of the snow. And it was like character select, but it was like all these dead and they're
Yeah.
like, no, they're not dead. They're unconscious. And it's like, tell me the difference between an unconscious body and a
Yeah.
dead body. And
I shot him in the face until he was unconscious.
Yeah, which one of these characters that looks like they're dead would you like to play? Which
Yeah.
of them is the most appealing to you, player?
And then I like mocked it up with like, what if we have like 8 playable characters at the end of this? And it's just this like mass of bodies. And like
Yeah.
everybody's like, that is horrible.
This is
Like,
just getting worse.
What a grim beginning to a game.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So-
remember people. Wasn't there a debate at the end about like, is it okay to shoot Jack?
Yeah. We had
At the end.
if you don't do it, Lilith does.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. That's. I think Randy sort of fought for that.
Yes.
he wanted the alternative. Like, if we don't want the player to just be a murderer straight
Right.
up, which
And
I
we were
mean,
like,
it's
no,
kind of
make a murderer.
excused.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why we also had to add the option so that you could basically tell Lilith like, I'll let you do this, and then she like phase blasts his face off.
Then you're just complicit in murder.
Yeah.
Side note, then, I mean, you do get that choice in Tales
Yeah.
to
Yeah, you
to delete Jack forever or not. So is that a redemption for the spirit of Jack? Like, you get to make the decision to save a piece of him if you like.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's also, with Tails, it's also like Reese, looked up to Jack and it was his hero. And like, does he want to like destroy his hero and move on, or does he want to keep a piece of him inside and stuff? But for us, it was just like, it was literally a moral issue of like, we thought it was really cool to shoot an unarmed Jack on his knees, not begging for his life,
Yeah.
but spitting vitriol at you. And Randy was like, that's murder. There's no other murder in the game. Everything else you do in the game is self-defense. And we were like,
Didn't need the conventions.
Yeah.
Something you said, Josh, reminded me of a thought I'd had about Jack in the moment of his death. You said he knows he's lost everything. I feel like he thinks there's still a way out of this. What do you think, Anthony?
I think he is. So Jack's a gamer, right? And when a gamer loses, they don't take it well. He is basically just he's
Yeah.
DMing
He's smashing
the
the
player.
keyboard.
He's smashing the keyboard. He's DMing the player and telling them really, really horrible things about who they are and about their family and stuff like that. And he's hoping in the back of his head that something will change and that he'll get another chance and that he'll be able to kill you. But I think he's just pissed that he lost. He's
Hasn't
not,
gone his way.
He's not smart enough to realize he's at the end of his rope entirely. He's just angry.
And he's also, in some ways, to me at least, what's the word?
Dick.
Yeah. No, he's sort of a screed against corporate culture. I mean, all the games are, but he is at the top of a corporate pyramid, and he's a dick and he's dumb.
I didn't realize that he was basically Elon Musk way back when, before we knew Elon Musk is such a turd. Like
He's a guy that if you heard him talk once, you'd be like, hey, he might be smart.
yeah, and then you hear him talk 5 times, and you're like, wait a
Oh,
minute, wait.
It's not quite working out. In terms of goals for cinematics, what were you able to accomplish with 2 that was sort of a dream?
We got to do the title cards a lot better. Those are those like splashes where it's like a boss gets introed or whatever. Like in the first game, like we literally had no memory left, so we couldn't do like full art in the
Physically
background.
or in the consoles?
Both.
Okay.
But like in the consoles, it was just like, yeah, we're out. And it's like, those things are like kind of expensive because like you have custom animation, you have custom art, and like it adds up. And like that's why like those, when they like smashed that little thing, like that's like smashing to a video that's like hidden underneath the ground that you can't see.
Oh, really?
Because
yeah.
like what we did have was video buffer. We didn't have any memory left, but we had video buffer. So like that time
Wow.
we could actually like allocate real memory and say like, okay, like we have a budget for these things. We know these many are going to happen per level. And that way we could do them for more characters. Cause like in Borderlands 1, it's like that first hour, we're just in your face with it constantly. And then like
And then it
7
stops.
hours later, you
Yeah.
get one for Mordecai. And that's about, or no, not Mordecai. The guy that used to be Mordecai's mesh.
Zane Flint? Or no, not Zane. Flint. Baron Flint.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's got that's medicinal, that one.
No, in BL1.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, that'd be a one.
yeah, that's
Okay.
Baron Flint.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like this time we could pace them out better. So like you actually got that drip through the entire
Right.
thing. The first rock and roll intro was like really well loved by people. So this time, like, okay, cool, we know that like this is going to be a franchise pillar, and we can actually like put more time and energy into it. And
how much of what was loved about Borderlands 1 became a franchise pillar? Like, did you look at fan reaction and they went XYZ, best components of the game, and so that's what gets amplified?
I don't think it was that like calculated so much as it's like we knew what we had fun building, and anywhere there was kind of a Venn diagram overlap of like, well, we have fun building that, and some portion of our community seems to like grok that and attach to it. Like, great, let's rub some funk on it and do that more.
What was the most fun thing to build?
Cinematic wise, I had a lot of fun with a lot of the title cards. Like, the art was like not in place at the time, so we just had to like sort of like mock stuff up with whatever we had. So like Boom Boom was originally like one guy named Boom Boom, and then like
Ruben made him two guys.
with like
Boom Boom.
yeah, with like a week left on the clock, it's like Boom Boom is now two people named Boom and Boom. And it's like we have no animations and we have no editor. So it's like it was like me and I think it was like James Houchen and one of our animators, and we just sort of like scrambled together as quickly as possible and built that. And like that was super fun. I also remember for the like Tiny Tina's DLC, like we knew that intro would be like, yeah, it's like she's going to be at table and like we're going to need all these table props. It's like we're going to need a DM screen. And I was like, great, I need a D20 dice. Like we should build a D20 dice for this game. And the poor artist who got put on that didn't understand, like, that's a very common shape. And like in 3ds Max, like that's just a primitive that you can build.
And they tried to make it from scratch?
So he took a bunch of reference photos for D20 dice and like hand traced them in multiple angles in 3D, and then like took like 3 weeks on it and turned it into me. And I start spinning it around and I realized it's all like off kilter and like wobbly. So like the actual D20 dice in that scene is like really janky.
I feel like you can go file, insert, D20.
And I felt so bad for every like marketing artist and like prop maker that was like, could you send us that reference so like we could go like build those things for real? I'm like, I'm not going to. Thanks.
That's upsetting.
But don't worry, we fixed that on Wonderlands.
Most fun thing to do boss wise?
The two
I mean,
major.
you've already talked about the end, which is huge and awesome.
But the I think overall the bunker fight for me was more fun. It was. It was. Well, I mean, I made it my own, really, but
I took it.
That's your Tarantino trunk shot. Is the
it is. But I didn't have. There was no complication with like, hey, this has to be the end of the story. Like, it's an important moment, but it's not like the gravity of the whole game leads to this point. So there was way less pressure. And there were lots of different versions of that fight that we kind of mocked up and went through. The original version of that fight, it wasn't the bunker at all. It was Brick in a tank.
Right.
And this originally was supposed to be the introduction of Brick to the game.
Right.
Because it's in that same level. And originally you were supposed to like show up in the area where Brick's hideout was, and you get attacked by someone in a tank, and you were supposed to have this big long fight with it. And then when you finally like destroy the tank, it like collapses or whatever. And then the top pops out and Brick comes out, and it's supposed to be this big surprise. And we had some mock-ups and I built some stuff for that, but it was like, why are we fighting Brick? Everybody loves Brick. And so eventually all of that kind of got swapped around. The bunker was originally supposed to be Jack's mansion.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah, where it was going to be a really weird, out of sorts, like, this just looks like a normal house, and it's very against your expectations of what a Borderlands game can be.
But it was also on the top of that huge spire.
Yeah.
It was a normal house, but it was like way up
Like
crazy.
a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath just sticks out on Pandora.
Kinda, yeah. That was the idea. Like, what if it was really weird and didn't fit anything else? And then eventually we were like, what if it did fit everything else?
Yeah.
Well, and I enjoyed, like, Keith and I had to figure out how to like reintroduce Brick then as like the Slab King in there, and it was like we had like Sledge's old like engine on
that hammer thing.
hammer
Yeah.
like left over, and we're like, cool, that's his weapon now.
Yeah.
So speaking of Brick's return, let's talk about returning versus new Vault Hunters. From a story standpoint, how did you want to handle that?
That was one of the more difficult things, because when I came onto the project, there were a couple things that were basically given to me as mandates. Two of which never happened, because that's how game development works. But one of them that did happen was we want the BL1 playable characters to show up as NPCs in BL2. And
why not carry on their stories?
Because you can tell their stories better when they're not the player. Because they get more dialogue, you get to characterize them more. Basically, I had to characterize these people who were only characterized in the first game by a lot of battle dialogue. And Lilith kind of comes off cocky, Roland kind of comes off just like he's having a good time, Brick is Brick, and Mordecai is just like a cool sniper guy. And each of them had to have something just a little bit more than that to hang on to, because otherwise they would all feel really similar when you met them as NPCs. So one of the big challenges was like, how do we make it a surprise every time you meet one of these guys, and how is it not disappointing and you don't feel like, man, this guy sucks? Because I remember very early on I was like pitching like, what if Brick's basically like he's bored and you need to like take him out for a fun time, like you're taking him out on a mandate or something like that, and just helping him blow stuff up, and people were like, that makes him like a child that I have to like carry around by the hand. And then eventually we got to the point where I was like, oh, what if he's a bandit king then? Like, is it okay if he's a bandit king? Because bandits are bad guys, but like he's kind of a bad guy, but in like a cool way. And then we sort of made that work. And in so doing, set up a precedent that would screw over every subsequent Borderlands game, as suddenly 4 NPC Vault Hunters becomes 8, becomes 12. Yeah.
And in doing that, you also have to maintain the character classes that are established, but they're also altered. They're expanded upon.
Yeah, there was less mandate to maintain the exact character classes so much as like the player role within them. Like, I think we kind of knew it's like Siren is mage. Like, we need a mage class, we need a warrior class, we need a functionally sniper long range class, and we need a melee class. And
regardless of how you want to play, you need to be able to play your way.
Yeah, kind of like those are the big 4 archetypes, because we're really trolling from RPGs, and it was less that like these have to be verbatim copies of them so much as like, okay, that's how our players like to play, or that's how we think the core loop works pretty well. So how do we incentivize you in some new ways, and how do we actually put some player skills around that are a little bit more fleshed out than the first game, because the first game's player skills are like pretty rough, 2-dimensional.
Yeah.
Salvador comes to mind as a gunzerker versus a berserker.
Yes, the only legitimate end game character.
In dealing with old Vault Hunters or returning Vault Hunters, it's interesting that you say now you can give them more dialogue. Do you feel like it was the chance to finally tell their stories?
It was less so the chance and more of them saying like, you have to tell their stories. And I was like, okay, I will do that so I don't get fired.
This is a lot of your motivation. I'm sensing a pattern.
Yeah.
We like paychecks and healthcare. It's
Welcome
fun.
to capitalism.
But I see, and I'll probably call this out in every episode that he's on. I've known Josh for almost 25 years. He doesn't seem afraid of getting fired.
Well, that's
He
because
seems
I've
to
been fired.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah,
So-
I've not been fired from Gearbox yet, so I'm still terrified.
Okay.
This is my 3rd tour of duty. Yeah.
One by choice, one not.
One but not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But no, it was genuinely fun, because it was honestly, I think a big thing was ripping off Mass Effect 2, because Mass Effect 2 is nothing but a series of like, meet this character and learn their story, meet this character and learn their story, and being able to do that level by level on a build up to meeting to eventually killing Jack was a really characterful way to spend time. So that instead of like spending a lot of time getting keys or getting batteries to plug into things, which we do eventually do, but like doing a bunch of really abstract mechanical stuff, instead it's like, meet these characters, rediscover who they are and what's happened to them in the intervening 5 years, which is, I think, again, with character being a pillar of Borderlands, ended up working really well for us.
Another character that weighs heavily over Borderlands 1 and 2 is Angel. Did you make the decision to develop Angel's backstory, or was there something leading up to that already established?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I did not work on Borderlands 1, but when I came in, one of the first things I asked was, so what's the deal with Angel? And the room erupted in laughter. Because I was like, so what is she? And they were
true
like,
story.
We don't know. And I was like, then why is she in the game? I'm like, we don't know. I was like, what?
She was the player's tutorial interface and the call to action.
Yeah.
It's important.
And beyond that, from a storytelling standpoint, nobody had any idea.
Yeah. At the end of the game, there's that Hyperion satellite that has Angel on it and lead speak. And that's the entire reason that half of the enemies you fight in BL2 are Hyperion.
And that was another, like, I mean, literally last week that thing went in. Brian Martell showed up in my office and said, okay, we're gonna do a post-credit stinger. We're gonna go up to space, and Angel's gonna be on the satellite. I'm like, how do I make any of that work in 3 days? And they're like, here's a satellite mesh that we have. Go
for it.
Here, and like the planet there was like an old planet mesh we had from like really early like BL1 development. Like it was just like laying around.
That never got used.
Yeah, so it was like cobbled together a space scene really quick. Art finished that satellite in like 2 days.
That's so funny.
And then like in After Effects, I had to like overlay Angel's face over the entire thing. And then I think Angel's, because like Claptrap's name is like CL4 PT.
Yeah.
It's like Angel's name is in there, and I believe for a while there it was like spelled completely wrong, like it was spelled Angle.
Oh God.
And like we were all just kind of gonna like let that one fly, and then Martel came to my office. He's like, "No, we're gonna fix it." I was like, "Okay, thanks. We'll remake that video real quick, buddy."
So yeah, the idea with Angel was in BL2 writ large, a lot of the story motivation was, can we justify things from Borderlands 1 that felt like hanging plot threads? And so it took a long time for Paul and I to get to, okay, well, what if Angel is Jack's daughter? And what if she's a siren? And what if he's been using her siren powers for XYZ? And what if the whole reason that you opened the vault in Borderlands 1 was because Handsome Jack wanted you to? And it's actually all intentional that you were disappointed at the end of Borderlands 1 by the loot and all that stuff. And that him opening the vault caused this. The funny thing was that one of the first things they told me was like, Iridium is going to be this really important thing that's going to be like our the way that we mutate characters. And in the second half of the game, it's going to be this massive mechanic. And it happens, but it's not something that really is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah. The number one rule of improv and game dev sequels is yes and. So it's like, okay, whatever they established in the last game, yes and.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
flesh it out from here.
Yeah, that whole plot thread lasted a long time in development before it kind of just went away.
Yeah.
Because originally the final boss was supposed to be the player getting up to the Hyperion station, and the Iridium outpour sort of growth across the planet was supposed to make the planet sentient or something. And you were supposed to basically Death Star shoot from the Hyperion station onto Pandora. And I don't even know who's in those meetings, but like at the end of that whole pitch where they were like, hey, this is how we think the game should end. I'm like, but the game is about getting guns and you don't use your guns in the final boss fight. Like, why would you even do that?
Yeah.
And then they were like, but it's the Iridium, it's important on the planet. And we're like, we don't know what to do with any of this.
Yeah. Sort of didn't need it.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that thankfully just kind of got cut in development and scaled way back.
The story is about Jack, not purple stuff.
Yeah.
It's about Jack and purple stuff. Yeah. And it's about, in your opinion, is it about Jack's finally, I don't know, we're seeing his humanity die as we see what he's done with his daughter, or is it long gone before then?
I think it's the opposite. So initially, the first draft of the script I did, Jack spent the entire game just being who he is in the beginning of the game, talking about butt stallions that he bought with all of his money and being a big jerk and just like laughing everything off and being very, very Bruce Campbell character in like a lesser Evil Dead movie. Not that there's such a thing as a lesser Evil Dead movie.
Were there one?
An imaginary shitty Evil Dead movie that I wrote. And Paul came back to me and he was like, we can do better than this. Like there should be an arc. The players having an arc for the players should have an arc for how they feel about Jack. So Jack should have an arc. And so it was like, oh, okay, well then the moment you kill his daughter, he should change into more of a person. He should stop joking around so much. He should get really genuinely angry. You should become the end boss of his game the second that you kill Angel. And I think that small change makes the game a lot more dynamic emotionally because Jack now has a change that occurs because of something you, the player, actually did. And it's often, it seems like that's not the case, but it's often really hard to have something that the player does influence the plot in a way that is felt because the player can't interact with the plot in any way other than shooting things. So to be able to be like, oh, I pressed a button and shut down Angel, and now Jack is like so angry at me that he's no longer making jokes, which is the one thing I knew him for doing in the beginning of the game. I think actually makes it a lot more fun to be chasing after him. Ideally, by the end of the game, both of you hate each other so much you'll do anything to kill each other.
And you save Angel by her request.
Yeah. I think it also doesn't count though because there was a good Feminist Frequency video where they're like, "Hey, here's a video game where you save a girl by helping her commit suicide. Here's another game where you save a girl by helping her commit suicide. Here's a third game." And like Borderlands is one of the 15 games where that's the case. It's a little bit of a trope, but if I could go back in time and find a way to not do that, I would probably not do that. But it made enough sense in the game that you could keep going. And then the idea was supposed to be, cool, you've saved Angel. The player is really psyched. And then, oh no, Roland gets killed and Lilith gets captured. And now you're at the Dark Night of the Soul, end of the second act, going into the third. I think it doesn't quite emotionally work that way. I think people cared far more about Bloodwing exploding than they did about Roland dying because of executional stuff and character and people just liking birds. Sort
of wrapping up character in BL2. We've got Ellie, we've got Sir Hammerlock, we've got Tina.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any particular memories of developing those characters or working with those characters?
Yeah. I remember when I wrote Tina, I was writing her in mind with my sister voicing her, but I didn't want to say like, "Hey, this character should be voiced by my sister," because that just feels like a dick move.
Nepo baby.
Exactly. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I wrote the audition side, and I was like, I'm not going to give any feedback on any of the people that come in whatsoever. I'm going to leave that entirely to everybody else because I don't want to get accusations of nepotism. And we brought in a bunch of people, and then Ash's audition played, and everybody's like, well, it's clearly her. Like it's got to be her. And so
Weird.
Yeah, weird. Who would have thought? It still was cheating because I still was writing for her voice. But I was really psyched to get to work with my sister on that, and especially on the DLC with Tiny Tina, which is probably my favorite thing I've done.
At what point in working on the game did you see Tiny Tina, and did anyone think this is going somewhere?
I thought the opposite because I remember some of our initial playtest and some of the initial coverage were people being like, she is so annoying. And some of the people were like, she's amazing. And I remember talking to Jeff Coat because I was anxious I was undiagnosed anxiety for the entirety of BL2 development. And I remember coming to Jeff Coat and being like, oh, I'm so screwed. People hate Tina. Some people like her, but whatever. And Jeff Coat said like, that's good. If some people hate her and some people like her, that means she has personality. If everybody thinks she's fine, that sucks.
Right.
And I think
I want a reaction from people whenever I make something, and love and hate are both kind of acceptable. If they don't care, then what you did didn't matter.
Yeah.
You can probably get therapy through our healthcare if you need to.
Oh, probably,
okay.
yeah.
Just wondering, it's something to think about.
Yeah, therapy don't work on me.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's also
No, it does. Therapy's great. Everybody should get therapy.
Everyone should get therapy.
Yeah.
that same thing applies to the way that we design all of our Vault Hunters, the way that we design all of the weapon manufacturers, because they're all weird and they're all different.
Yeah.
And we don't try to make all of them likable by everyone because that's impossible.
Yeah.
But
I remember Matthew Armstrong saying he wanted people to hate Malawan if they loved Jacobs and vice versa.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was probably Matt Armstrong's words coming through me back to you because Matt told me that same thing. And I kind of clicked in my head why it was okay for me to hate Malawan weapons. And I'm like, oh, okay, because somebody's going to love that shit.
Well, and you're not making pop music. Like, this is not... It is for everybody, but it's not for all of everybody.
The whole game is for everybody in a sense, but individual elements of the game are supposed to intentionally be not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's supposed to elicit a reaction, and you're not wrong. The best fiction, the best media, the best stories elicit a strong emotion, not necessarily a positive emotion.
Yeah.
But it has to also make you want to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
So it can't piss you off to the point of no return.
I actually was kind of worried about that a little bit whenever we were doing the Bloodwing boss fight. One, because whenever we were kind of developing that fight, there was always the worry like, hey, we're making the player fight someone. And like anyone that was a Mordecai main in the first game was going to be real upset about this, like just coming into it. And as we were building the fight, we knew that we wanted the fight to have multiple stages. And our general go-to is like, okay, every phase is going to be modeled after one of the elements so that we can put the player through some gameplay paces, make them use different gear or whatever. And we realized sort of after we had kind of spec'd out the fight that technically Borderlands 2 considers explosive to be an element type, which doesn't really make any sense, but that's how we made the game. And we didn't really have any gameplay for it, but we were working on like, how do we wrap up this fight? How do we end it? And I don't know whose idea it was to
she'd
just
die in the sky and like the physics would just be like wonky because she's so big and it would like she'd just like float off into the like horizon. Okay,
She goes to space to live with her people.
That's her dead body just fell into the skybox.
And so at some point,
That's how you select your character.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
But once we had the thing in like at a really controlled situation where she comes to the ground so that you can end the fight, and we were like, we don't really want the player to kill Bloodwing. Like that's going to be bad.
That's too sad.
I don't know whose idea it was. Was it yours? I mean, you're a
think it was.
monster. Yeah. The first time that we had that in the game and then we sent it through QA, QA was so upset about Bloodwing's head exploding, and one of them cried. And that was the moment I knew this moment in the game works.
Yeah.
Like I remember
Like, holy
workshopping that
shit.
in the room, and it was like you and Paul and you may have been there too, and like we knew Bloodwing was going to land, and she was going to be sitting there, and like she was going to explode. And it felt weird because like she could explode, and like because the player has utility, you know, like they could be off in the corner looting things or doing other stuff and not look at it. And we're like, okay, we need to put a collar around her neck and actually be like, have the player actually have agency and like walk up to her face and stare her in the face and like use the thing and pull it off. And like, that's the thing that triggers the explosion, just to make sure like it's probably just going to be right in your face. And like, once players knew that, they could like feel that coming on. And like, I just remember watching like some of our like long-term play testers come in where they would like be just like, we would hire them for 2 weeks, just play the game. And one of them like just refused to do it. Like she was just like, I know her head's going to blow up and I don't want to do this. It's like, press the button anyways.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's a Milgram experiment.
Yes.
I think I remember at a marketing thing, I met Harvey Smith from Arcane for the first time, who I like idolize. And he was like, hey, my wife says, go screw yourself for killing Bloodwing. And I was like, yeah,
We did
I had an
it.
effect on Harvey Smith's life in a small way.
Yay.
In our pre-interview, when I asked BT what was your favorite moments from working this game, second favorite, and I quote, was making the player complicit in blowing up Bloodwing's head.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm proud of myself for that one
Yeah.
still to this day.
I mean, you have a nice little grin on your face.
I mean,
it's still working.
That's the like there's like places that I can understand where my fingerprints are, and like my fingerprints all over that one.
And it works. It really works. Like the whole point of that was make you hate Jack for taking away something that was integral to 1/4 of the people who played the first game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people at that point, that's when they really shift into hating Jack.
I mean, you also kill Roland.
Yeah, but people don't care about that because it happens in a cutscene. I think honestly, when you compare Bloodwing,
It's the agency. You're right.
yeah, it's that moment of
Yeah.
boop, and then watching it happen in front of you that makes it feel so immediate and so visceral.
Because not all players understand, but like 10% of players completely understand because we telegraph it with the dialogue about what's about to happen. And
Yeah.
for those 10%, like the pain on their faces, and this was like early Twitch era. Like this is the first game I think that like we launched that we could actually watch people play.
Yeah, we spent like
on
a
launch
week
day.
after launch doing that. It
Just
was so
watching
fun.
And just
players,
like
yeah.
we all kind of knew like they're getting to the Bloodwing fight, turn it on. Yeah, like we want to watch their facial reaction when this happens. To them.
Cry.
I remember I watched this one streamer, and when the Bloodwing fight happened, he was like, "No!" He screamed, "No!" And then the second the Roland cutscene started, he went, "That guy's gonna die." And then the second it went into non-interactive, he's like, "That guy's gonna die," and then he did.
Yeah.
But Bloodwing is a puppy. So
Yeah.
like you
Oh, for
don't
sure.
you don't want to blow up the puppy's head.
Yeah, no,
Like, who would?
it's way easier to kill an animal than it is to kill a human being for emotional impact.
You said that backwards and for emotional impact.
Yeah.
I thought you said it's way easier to kill an animal. It's just easy. They don't have souls.
They trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
get
have
close.
big eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll come up to you if you have food.
In Independence Day, the movie, the director was talking about how they had a cut that didn't have the dog running away from the explosion, and people were like, "Okay," and then he put the dog in, and people were like, "Oh my god, I care about this suddenly now. It's real to me."
The matting on that is so not perfect that the dog is completely enveloped in a wall of flame and just kind of leaps away from it.
Yeah, perfect.
It's awesome.
Fucking works.
We've talked about in the past if we ever do like a permadeath mode that like if there's a pet class and we have permadeath mode, then like if your pet dies in the middle of your run, like they are also permadeath.
Yeah.
And it would also affect all of your interactions from there on.
Yeah.
Vault Hunters, sit down. It's time we had a talk. Get on Daddy's knee. When a game developer and a publisher love each other very much, they work together closely. And from that closeness, well, if God smiles on it, comes a bundle. You see, kiddo, Gearbox and 2K are offering a new bundle for Borderlands that contains every Borderlands game to date for one great price. It's called the Borderlands Collection Pandora's Box, and it's available now on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. And even though the bundle is new, and it might be scary, and things are going to change for us, we still love you very much. There's one character we haven't talked about at all, and that's Claptrap.
Yeah, for a
Claptrap
reason.
Are you actually on Team Hate Claptrap?
Oh yeah, I was on Team Hate Claptrap when I got hired.
I forgot.
It was bewildering to me when I showed up and people were like, "We love Claptrap. He's our little guy." I'm like, "He sucks," and everybody thinks he sucks. I'm amazed you guys like him.
I fucking love him.
Everybody loves
Wild.
Claptrap.
Yeah.
We are made of
Wild.
hate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's who we are.
But no,
guess
but
so.
it's fine. As the person that has to put words into his mouth, it's good for you to absolutely hate him.
Yeah, because I had to write him in such a way that I felt bad for him
Yeah.
and started to like him. So that's why he becomes
this-
a pathetic Charlie Brown.
This
character.
is how Claptrap's birthday came around, isn't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually, I remember watching Paul make that mission, and it's like a 4-minute mission.
Yeah.
And it was excruciating sitting through the dialogue because it's so pathetic.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Oh my God.
It's one of my favorite quests in the
Yeah.
game because it was literally Paul and I were sitting around with like. Because if you remember in Borderlands 1, there's a bunch of Claptrap units.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the very first things I want to do in Borderlands 2 is like, okay, I want to kill all of them except for one. I want there to be one Claptrap. There's only one C-3PO. There's only one R2-D2. There should be only one Claptrap that we really care about. And we want the player to feel sorry for him, even if they don't like him. So having you be the only person to come to his birthday party, it was literally inspired by Paul just walking past an office one day where they were playing the Celebrate Good Times, come on. And there was one guy in an office just like drinking a cup of water with a cake there, and he was the only one there. And Paul was like,
no.
so yeah, that's where that came from, and it's great. And that's my favorite Claptrap moment.
In this game, you are obviously Claptrap is our onboarding character. He's our guide. He is our trainer. But you're his minion.
Yes.
What gave Claptrap that idea?
So Claptrap was actually tricky to write because I initially wrote Claptrap based on the behind the scenes Claptrap short videos that y'all had made for Borderlands 1, where I didn't realize it, but the idea was that, that's the actor who plays Claptrap. That's not Claptrap. So I made him very profane, very mean, very self-centered and conceited. And so there was a whole draft of the script where he was just like that. And then basically I sat down with Eddings and Martell and all these other executives, and they were like, no, Claptrap's supposed to be just eager to please and pathetic and really, really friendly. And so I went, okay, went back and rewrote everything to make him more of a like, he's still eager to please, but now he's just arrogant enough to think that you are his underling. Because if he was just like, hello, sir, please do this stuff at the beginning of the game, it would feel a little bit, I don't know. I wanted it to feel like you weren't quite important enough yet. Like you just got killed almost on a train. The very first thing you meet is dumb robot, and that dumb robot still thinks he's superior to you.
But it feels endearing in a way.
Good.
It's like, I'll let this guy call me, his underling because he seems like he knows the way out of here.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
I mean, that whole setup there is that like this is where Jack dumps all the bodies. That's why it's like just a wasteland of dead bodies out there, and Claptrap's out there with a shovel. He's like, okay, more carcasses to bury. He's like, I finally got a
He's
friend.
kind of the Wall-E of carcasses.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
Well, and his
much.
house
In a
is
way.
made out of the carcasses of other Claptraps.
Other Claptraps,
Yeah.
which is great. I love that touch.
Oh boy. Any other Claptrap things that the Vault Hunters don't know? What Claptrap details lurk in the recesses?
What was his original name? Zippy?
Zippy the robot.
Yeah.
The weapons manufacturers in this game have distinctive styles, distinctive characteristics. It gives the player, I want to say, an equal balance of maybe agency and frustration. If you get what you want, don't get what you don't want. Like, do you feel like players not only have a class that they main, but a weapons manufacturer that they love?
Oh, for sure. Everyone's got their favorites. But in this type of game, you very specifically can't ever give the player what they really want. Because then,
How so?
Because if you do that, they stop playing the game.
It's about the chase.
Like, it's always about the
Vegas.
chase.
It's like I'm going to that slot machine because there's like a Ducati motorcycle around. And it's like, man, if I win the slot machine, I get a good Ducati motorcycle. And it's like, I didn't win that, but I got $4. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Is this game about winning $4 and saying that's pretty nice?
yeah.
I
I mean, if we did our jobs right, yes.
Here's a taste.
There's a reason that when Paul put in a slot machine, we saw Twitch streams of people just doing that over and over and over again because they're just playing the game in the micro sense by just doing that over and over again.
My favorite element of the different manufacturers and the different weapons is the TDR Walmart guns.
Oh, yeah. They're disposable.
Where did that come from?
Was that Matt's idea?
I believe it was Matthew Armstrong and Rob Hieronymus working together.
I think the throw it away reload thing was Hieronymus.
Yeah, I think so.
But the idea of wanting something so cheap and disposable that you literally threw it away.
And they made a nightmare for themselves because no other gun in the game works that way with the
No.
reload. So every single time they changed anything about the guns, they had to be like, oh my God, the reloads for TD, or oh no.
It's been a nightmare ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the gift that has continued to
but
give.
now they have little legs and it's
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, they're little people.
But there's something about the projection of corporate reality onto this space scenario, which is someone's going to make the crappy, disposable, plastic, lightweight crap.
Yeah.
But that it's going to sell. Like there's going to be a lot of it out there. It's accessible. Are there any other particular weapons manufacturers that you had any agency in developing their style or how they're,
Oh, not at all. Not
No.
That was someone else entirely.
Yeah, but I mean, holistically, it was all about like the Borderlands 1 guns, like all the pieces worked with each other and like they had brand identity to them, but like the visuals were all very, very
All
samey.
over the place.
Like, it was
Like, it
really
just-
hard to like, is that a Jacobs?
Yeah.
I know the icon says Jacobs, so I guess it is. And with these, it was like, okay, let's push all of that. So like Jeremy really pushed the art and said, okay, like
Jeremy Cook, the art director.
Yeah, we're gonna give everybody like, what is the actual visual identity for this thing? Matt and Rob really worked on like, what is the actual like gameplay identity for these things, and then that let everybody else start like hanging their Christmas ornaments too, because then like it gives you a little place for audio to sort of be like, okay, what's the audio identity for these things? If there's narrative bit around it, like
what's Torg's spokesperson going to sound like?
Yeah.
With the weapons manufacturers, we've talked about the corporate influence on Pandora, the world of Pandora. There's also a heavy private military subplot kind of running through the whole franchise too. It's an easy thing to indict, like, hey, what are you against? Corporate America and private militaries, it all sucks. But is that what you're saying here, or is it just that everyone knows that?
Yeah, no, I think corporations are bad. But yeah, one of the franchise pillars when I first came on was they were like, we want to be like Paul Verhoeven films, where it's like hyper violent, but it's kind of funny and kind of saying something.
I'm ready to do my part.
Yeah, and exactly. Starship Troopers has some very interesting things to say about jingoism and fascism. RoboCop is very explicitly about corporate influence over state matters and stuff like that. So we felt like it's okay to and also it's punching up to make fun of corporations or to say that they suck. So it was the easiest low hanging fruit to be like, hey, corporations are bad in this universe. And but also you really want their stuff. Like when you see an orange thing drop that a corporation makes you really psyched.
They do have good stuff, the corporations.
Yeah.
They've got what you want.
On the one hand, the planet's dying, but on the other hand, look at all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Have you seen the fine variety of Amazon Basics products out there? Their batteries are cheap. They don't last very long.
No.
They're not good.
No.
But you can get a lot of them for a little amount
That's
of money.
what matters.
Yeah, a lot of them for small money.
Well, it's also like we're not here to make a game about like international trade politics.
Yeah.
No.
So like, who
No.
can be a big galaxy-wide villain that's not like generic space aliens or
some weird nation conglomeration of governments.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
what if corporations were galactic-sized?
Yeah, that's cool.
And like this is just a rounding error to them over here on this like weird podunk planet.
Yeah.
Well, the story of Pandora begins with corporations strip mining a planet for all it's good for and then going, peace.
Yep.
See ya.
Yeah, and I mean Pandora is a trash planet. Like it was like imagine we just had a planet like this is where everybody just dumps their trash.
And then it accidentally becomes valuable again, and they all go, hang on.
Yep.
Yep.
There is that turning on a dime reaction of where's the profit, where's the thing I can exploit, and then they literally loom over you in the heavens in a large space station. Sort of obviously the positioning of the Helios is over the moon to make sure that you are aware of it at all times.
Yeah, that was
Literally, yes.
Yeah, that was
From a
big,
gameplay
big thing from
standpoint.
art that they were really psyched about was like a constant reminder in the skybox of the control Hyperion has over you.
So both in the story and in gameplay. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always look up and see it, but then you always feel it.
Yeah.
It's also
player.
it's an easy MacGuffin for like how do we get enemies into space or into a play space? And it's like, well, they run out of doors. Or like where else are they coming from? It's like, well, we're going to shoot them from the moon at any given point in time, and like it's always looming that you don't know when we're going to do that to you.
Right.
It was always impressive. The very first time for a vertical slice where they came in and hit the ground, I was like, oh my God, it's a sequel. Like it just something about the fact that they came from space made me feel like now it's a sequel. Now it's something special.
Josh, when you, in your capacity as, what's your title? Boss ass bitch or
Boss designer?
boss designer?
Yeah.
That's what it is. So in your capacity as boss designer, what did you design? The actual bosses or the fights?
The fights. So I spent a lot of time when I first joined the project working with the story and the mission team, trying to figure out like what are the goals for like these big set piece boss fights that we want to do, who needs to be there, who's got to be involved, and trying to figure out like where are we going to be in the game? What's the backdrop? Can I use any of that in the fight itself? We knew that the last act of the game was going to be very sort of mountainous and lava-ish. And so obviously like, okay, we're going to put the final boss in a volcano. Like that's the
'cause
most
we're a
James
video
Bond
game.
thing to do. It's basically just me working with the art department saying like, hey, we need a big monster. I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Let them do some art concepts for a while.
What makes a good boss fight?
A giant monster that does a pattern that you can eventually figure out and then overcome.
You also had a really good sense for enforcing movement on the player's behalf.
Yeah. I've always thought that movement is like super important and trying to like create like, hey, this whole area of the arena is about to become submerged in lava, so you got to go over there now. And like forcing players to move around makes it feel like at least I'm trying to do my job. I don't know.
I love the lasers in the bunker fight where you're just having to hop between them. And
Oh, yeah.
I love that. That's one of my favorite.
Yeah, Code
touches.
hated when I did that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Turns out that was a nightmare to make shippable.
Oh.
But it worked.
But it worked.
Yeah.
You also really pushed us towards having like individual boss arenas for them because like the first game, a lot of the boss fights are like just in the big levels. So like,
Yeah.
we didn't have a lot of space, and like it was easy for the players to kind of like leave and disengage with it or be on the other side of the map. And like you really pushed us towards like, hey, we're going to go through a level transition and go to a specific level for a specific boss
I was
fight.
really big on sort of the pomp and circumstance because, I mean, I grew up playing Nintendo and Sega Genesis and stuff. And like a boss fight in an old side scroller always felt like this crazy moment. Like, oh crap, some giant sprite comes on the screen.
And the
it's like
music
half
was
the screen. Yeah. And so because my background was in level design, I'm like, I'm just going to build the arenas for the fight as I'm building the fight itself. And then doing things like pushing UI to give us like the huge health bar at the top of the screen. Because I wanted like, even if you're not looking at the boss, you need to be able to tell like the state of the fight. And even that like barely got implemented and doesn't even tell you the correct information half the time.
Oh, really?
Like,
Don't say that.
Yeah. No, it's great. Like if
Secrets.
Yeah, if the boss has armor, it doesn't tell you. Like it's supposed to. We just forgot. We didn't notice.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Time for a patch.
It's too late.
15 years later.
But yeah. So somehow I ended up just doing boss fights for a lot of Borderlands.
You're good at them.
Yeah.
Let's talk about favorite times, favorite things. BT, you said the second favorite thing was making the player complicit in Bloodwing, but your first involved a diamond pony.
Yeah. So when we were making the Tiny Tina DLC, like that was probably the most fun a lot of us got to have on the project because like we knew what the formula was. All of our tools were awesome at that point. We knew how to use them, and like we had a game plan, and the whole team was engaged. And we just executed. So like I was doing the cutscenes, and I just like Josh Rearick, the animator that I was working with, like we just cranked through those so fast that like I had a bunch of spare time. So I went to Paul Helquist, the creative director, and it's like, what else do you need? And he was like, here's like, we want to have Butt Stallion show up at the end of the game, and can you make all the like feeding her and having it like basically be like a slot machine underneath the hood? You know, that like functionally the logic inside of her is the slot machine logic. It's just with different drop tables. And like I had so much fun doing that because it's like it's so weird. And when you're 29 and like somebody's like paying you to come in, it's like, what was the task that you got to do today? It's like, well, I made a diamond pony shit rainbows and vomit guns. Like I was just like I
can't believe we didn't get a BAFTA.
so tickled that like this is my life, like this is what I get to do. Like the funny bit about that is that like I felt bad that we got it all working in a test map, and then we had to like go put it in the real map, and there's a code bug that's still like we shipped with the game and we couldn't patch it, that like she's not a lootable, like the chest that opened up, because those can throw like gear out, and the like she could only spit it out at a very specific angle and the opposite angle, which was great because mouth and butt. But
Yeah.
like if you rotated her slightly off axis, like it just came out sideways. So like Level Art had built the entire like enclosure that she goes in at the last little bit, and like it was completely the wrong angle. I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to rotate the entire level like 45 degrees to like make it like not the entire level, but,
you could just
But this whole area. Yeah.
Yeah, like this whole area.
You could have had a viewfinder that says only look through here to see her at this angle.
Yeah, and the amount of rage, they're like, this is going to take like a day of rework, and it's just like, I am so sorry. This is just what it is, guys.
What was the origin of Butt Stallion?
So Butt Stallion was initially a joke that literally nobody knew about. I had written it kind of just for myself, because when you die in Borderlands 2, the new use station says something when you come back to life. And initially I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun if Jack would say stuff to you to mock you every time you died? So there was this recurring joke where we didn't end up shipping it because it ended up being too frustrating to hear Jack every time you died. It would have been like rage inducing. But it was a recurring joke where every time you died, he would tell you what he bought with the money that you just gave him, because Hyperion owns the new use stations.
Right.
So eventually he would be like, hey, I just bought a pony made out of diamonds. Ha ha ha. And I was like, this is so funny. I'm a genius. And then we didn't end up using it. I was like, oh, darn, my favorite dialogue, and we didn't use it. But then we got feedback from users and from 2K being like, hey, Handsome Jack isn't in enough of the story early on. Like, we get a lot of him later on, but like there should be like a really, really big injection of Handsome Jack at the beginning of the game. And so I was like, oh, it's time to use the Butt Stallion dialogue, and just inserted it in the very, very beginning. It was like one of the last things we did Zach Ford put it in there, and I'm sure that nobody knew about it because it's exactly the kind of thing that would have made somebody come to my office and be like, we have to get rid of this. This is too stupid. Like, what do you mean he has a horse called Butt Stallion? Like, he also says her and stallions for male, so that doesn't even make sense.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
You just blew
I
my
don't like
fucking
it now.
mind.
Yeah.
I don't like it now.
No, but it was my favorite little thing that got snuck into the game. And so when we actually got to get to DLC 4, the Tiny Tina DLC, and actually make Butt Stallion, I was so happy.
When you got to expand on Butt Stallion,
Yeah.
what Butt Stallion goals did you have that you were able to execute?
So
What a dumb question.
No, it's
This is my job, by the way.
It's less dumb than you think because so DLC, the way I think of DLC is like a game is your first date and DLC is your second date when you've shown enough of yourself that you can feel a little bit comfortable and you show yourself like at your weirder side.
Sure.
And so we knew that, DLC 4 is going to end with Tina coming to grips with Roland's death. And that's going to be pretty dark and it's going to be pretty emotional. So there should be something to cut that a little bit to make it a little bit more fun. And so, okay, what if you're rescuing a princess? And what if that princess turns out to be a reference to this one line from the beginning of the game that maybe you don't even remember, but if you do, it's going to make you fall over laughing, hopefully, because it's such a random, weird thing to pull back as a reference. And so, yeah, knowing that we could use Butt Stallion as that little sticker joke at the end, and then that BT could take it and make an incredible loot machine out of it and all that stuff. It was just the perfect confluence of story and gameplay and
I love that it's
art.
a creature with a slot machine shoved up its butt. That's
Yeah,
the best
pretty much.
thing.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know how to build this. You know what it does? It's the slot machine because I can just copy this logic. Boop,
great.
I'm done.
Josh, you told me about your favorite moment in game development actually happened during this development cycle.
Yeah, it's actually the combination of DLC 4, the Tiny Tina DLC, and the Headhunter packs, which were the DLCs that came after that. The development of those all kind of mashes together. It's a weird timeline because originally I don't even know who came to me and was like, hey, we have this little thing that the art director and the lead enemy designer, Ruben Cabrera, had made, this little jack-o'-lantern boss fight. Like, they were pitching it for a Halloween release, but there was no way to release it on time. It kind of got thrown in the trash. Do you think you could pull this out of the trash and make anything out of it at all? And so I was kind of taking some old work that had been, in a closet for a year or two and seeing if I could make anything fun with it and, get some new boss fights, some new material. And they were like, okay, well, this is clearly a Halloween themed thing. And we want to do more of these if you can make these little mini boss encounters. So I am not smart. So I was like, cool, well, it's Halloween. I'll just do Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we'll just do some holiday themed stuff. And so I started by myself building boss fights out of scraps and building levels that were like holiday themed, these little teeny tiny things. And in the middle of me literally just coming into work, just messing around with this random garbage, my boss, Ruben, tapped me on the shoulder, and because he's working on the Tiny Tina DLC, and I'm in the same room with everyone else that's been working on it, and I'm watching this project that's clearly going extremely well. And he's like, hey, I want to make a raid boss for Tiny Tina, but we don't have it in the budget anywhere. And you think we can just sneak it in? Like, we're not gonna tell anybody. We're just gonna make it. We're just gonna sneak it in. And I was like, I'm in. Let's do this. And so I built an entire level, and he built the Ancient Dragons of Destruction, which is the group of the four raid boss dragons, so that their initials would be AD&D. So dumb. And that whole thing was just like a little Skunk Works project off book, and it was awesome.
Black Ops.
Pretty much. Yeah. It was just this little thing that we kind of did in secret. And then one day, I think we showed it to Paul. We're like, hey, we have this thing. Can we put it in? And then you had to write like 5 lines of dialogue about it really quick. And then we had to like find a way to cram it into one of the other levels so that you could get to it somehow. But a long time ago, game design used to really be about just make some shit in secret and see what you can sneak in the game.
Right.
And we can't do that anymore.
Games
But
too big.
that was the last time that I was able to kind of like to do that and to live that fantasy of like, hey, I have a random idea and it's gonna be a lot of work, but we're just gonna make it and see what happens.
It's like working on the first Iron Man versus Infinity War.
yeah, probably.
The stakes are too high at this point to sneak things in. BT, you said one of your favorite moments is the beautiful simplicity of Face McShooty.
That is still the like the amount of people that come to us and they want to talk about that mission that takes all of 30 seconds, and like it just like apparently
The mission: shoot this guy in the face.
Yeah, and I mean it is Borderlands like distilled down and distilled down and distilled down until it's just like 1 ounce. And it's just like, again, Borderlands is a game where like you solve all your problems with guns. So for somebody to just be like, my problem is I'd like to be shot in the face. And the whole reason was like an arbitrary tech thing that Paul Helquist was working on to get body region specific damage working, and like code was like not escalating the feature. So it's like we got it escalated. So it's like, yeah, we need to actually completely understand that we specifically shot somebody in the head, not in their body.
He does complain if you don't shoot him in the face.
Yeah, and like it let us sort of like test that system out. To be like, okay, well, like we could test and like play a specific piece of dialogue. It's like, I didn't tell you to shoot me in the arm. I told you to shoot me in the face. And it's like, and that was like
that weirdly ended up being a really complicated mission.
Yeah.
Like it's 5 seconds long in the game, but there were so many different game systems that went through it that were broken or just non-existent.
That's why
the optional objectives that you could fail, like we had to make that work for that joke.
Yeah, because usually optional objectives are not complete and then they get complete, but this one starts and it's complete and it says don't shoot him in the arm, don't shoot him in the leg, don't shoot him in the chest, and those are all complete. But if you shoot them, it uncompletes them and makes you fail the mission.
Yeah.
I remember Ryan Heaton, I think, was putting all that together and he was like, I hate you so much for making this.
And then like to make it full circle, when we did we did a standalone release of DLC 4, the Tiny Tina's DLC, like on the way to Wonderlands coming out, just to like get people to like, you can go play this as a standalone game now and it's cheaper, it's a giveaway or whatever. And the local studio that we found to help us with that, Stray Kite, is Paul Helquist's studio. So after all these years, it was just like, hey, Paul, I need you to add Shooty McFace to this DLC. So he took Shooty McFace out of the main game and like re-added him. So like there's a dungeon in the in the standalone version of
I didn't even know that
product.
Of course.
There's like, and it's like recontextualized as like a skeleton or a guy that's like in that dungeon or whatever.
That's great.
But like all these years he got to like completely re-implement that. And I knew how much of a technical hassle it was. And I stuck it on the design document that I handed them to be like, hey, we'd like to add these things to the game, thinking like Paul's going to read this and be like, no, that's so much work. And then like, Paul is Paul, so he
just did it.
He did it and he got it done. Yeah. So it tickles me to no end that like it had a second life.
Anthony, did you write the dialogue for Face McShooty?
I did. I came up with the whole idea for the quest.
Okay. Shoot me in the face. In the face. Do it. Shoot me in the face. Face, 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 face. Now. Bullets in the face. Want them. Need them. Gimme, gimme, gimme. At the sound of the bell, it will be face shooting a clock. Bong. Knock, knock. Who's there? Shoot me in the face. End of joke. Not really. I'm going to sing a song. Shoot me at the end of it. Da 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 bong. I noticed you haven't shot me in the face. Curious as to why.
You know how Dolly Parton wrote like Jolene and another song on the same day? And she was like, oh, I did it. I made 2 classics on the same day. That's how I felt that day. I knew I'd done it. I knew that it was all going to be okay, ultimately. That I was indeed a great mind.
Please don't shoot me just because you can.
Wow.
I mean, the amount of like places in the game that you had to write rambly 60-second dialogue, because like Claptrap does a variation on that, like after the boom boom fight. This is like, hey, I need you to shoot the door, like when I leave, but not right now. But like, I need you to be very clear, and like does the same gag, and I was like, this is going to get real tired for people, and I was completely wrong.
Josh, this is going to sound weird, but tell me about Car Baby.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Actually, that's part of the Headhunter pack. So for the 4th Headhunter pack that we did, it was supposed to be Valentine's Day was the theme because they were all holiday based. And so Valentine's Day was all about having this really weird wedding between 2 Goliaths. And as part of the mission, you come across their baby that's been left in a burnt out car in a rainstorm. And because the quest requires you to get something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue, I think it was the something blue was decided that if a baby cries, it's sad and sad is blue. So whatever.
I thought you were going to say if a baby was, devoid of blood, it would be blue.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So at one point, and this actually shipped in the mission, you take the baby and you dangle it upside down over a still or a beer vat or something, and you say something sad to it. And I don't remember what you wrote, but it was a unique thing for every character, and they were like real depressing. And then whenever you say that, like the baby cries, tears fall into the vat, and and you got like the whiskey out of it, and now it's blue whiskey or something. I don't remember the exact circumstances. The thing is that immediately after you're done with the baby, with what I need to do, the next thing that you're going to do is murder its parents. And so we were like, okay.
And then raise it?
No. Oh, no. This is Pandora. We don't do that. So we sort of had the situation where you found a baby, you took a baby, you did something mean to the baby to make it cry. We have to resolve this somehow. And so the first thing that we did was like, well, we should just go put it back where we found it. Like, whatever. And so
it'll know where it is. It'll find its way.
Whatever. And so we go back to the area, which is literally, it's a burnt out motel with a burnt out car in front of it. And originally you put the baby back in the burnt out car and it's still raining. And we're like, it's not safe to leave a baby in a rainstorm. And one of my guys, Lloyd, actually implemented all of it. And originally it was like you would come back, you'd put the baby in the burnt out car, and then you had the option to close the door. And if you did that, the baby cried. But you could then open the door again if you wanted. And then the baby was happy and laughing. And like, it was the player's choice what state they wanted to leave the baby in.
Video games are about choice.
Yeah. Wasn't Lloyd interning?
Yeah. Oh.
I want to be very clear. You had your intern do that, not your employee.
Yeah. I had my intern do this. Actually, there was a reason. There was a very specific reason, and I forgot because I'm a terrible person. Returning the baby was the optional objective.
Right.
And my goal, because after optional objectives were a new feature in Borderlands 2, and after watching playtesters, I realized that there's really no such thing as an optional objective. If you give the player a list of things to check off, they're going to do everything.
Right.
And my goal was to try to design an optional objective that was so fucked up that a player would be like, I'm not going to do that. But we implemented it all, or rather my intern at the time, Lloyd, implemented all of it. It all worked. And then we had to pull all of it back out. And instead, there was no optional objective. You had to leave the baby at the church with Moxie. Yeah.
In the little drop off, like the fire department.
They're literally, we had actually, it was still a tire. Like you set the baby into a tire, but it was inside of the church next to Moxie, with the implication that Moxie would look after the baby, I think.
I think that was the right call,
Yeah.
ultimately.
implication.
Looking back, I think that was the right
Oh,
call.
yeah, because that church was Innuendo Bot's rectory.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
BT, you said one of your other proudest moments was retribution for Bloodwing.
Like I'd said at the end of, we were making all those cutscenes for the Tiny Tina DLC, and it was like we were just like rapid fire iterating on a lot of these things. So we actually got to like spend polish time. So it was like, where can we make it feel like good for the fans that are going to like notice the little like itty bitty stuff? And because Jack in the main game, Jack kills Bloodwing through a series of like elemental explosions. When like, I don't know how we're going to call it, like Phantom Bloodwing comes in and saves and kills Handsome Sorcerer, does it with that same series of elemental explosions and just like
cool.
reverses like what Jack did to Bloodwing. And like I like that that's in like Tina's headcanon, that like that's her version of revenge too.
Justice for Bloodwing.
Yeah.
And then I had to make Bloodwing's statue like gigantic because they were like, build a statue for Roland and Bloodwing at the end of the thing. So it's like big Roland statue on a pillar, and then like put a 2-foot bird statue next to that. And it's just like,
you'd
that
never
looks,
see it.
That looked like a rock. So I was just like, canonically, they just bronzed.
Yeah.
They didn't even.
Yeah, Mordecai just bronzed the body.
Yeah.
It implies they did it to Roland too. Like
Potentially. Because you see Bloodwing's body later on in Borderlands 2,
Yeah.
because Jack had it in Hyperion City. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, on display.
Opportunity, is that the name of?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember the shipping name of any.
was
Yeah.
Opportunity.
She's
Yeah.
metallic. He's stone.
Yeah.
In that scene. And Krieg didn't have a texture because we were still certing. Like DLCs all have to be like certified by first parties at different times. So it's like those things were happening parallel. So they were like, put all the Vault Hunters, like Gage needs to be in there, Krieg needs to be in there. And it's like Krieg didn't have any textures on his body. So it was just like a gray mesh of Krieg's shape. It's like, we're doing this entire scene in silhouette, and we're just putting like, you know, like bloom and more bloom until it just feels like a glamour shot.
It looked very
at the
intense.
end. And it's just like, this is intense art.
It was great.
Yeah. Still one of my favorite endings then, because then the like Claptrap opened his mouth and ruined the whole thing.
Yeah.
Stinger
That
is
was pretty great.
my favorite way to
Yeah.
resolve an entire plot.
Speaking of endings, we're coming to ours. And so we're going to move on to the trivia portion.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, joy.
I was not told there'd be a trivia portion.
You're getting your wish. I hope you win. This is not a question. It's just a fact. At the time of its pre-order time, Borderlands 2 was the most pre-ordered game in 2K history.
Cool.
Yep.
Sweet.
Take that, Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yep. Dethroned the king.
Carnival games suck my butt.
Okay. Josh, you're not allowed to answer this one.
Oh, all right.
What Borderlands 2 character did Josh Jeffcoat dress as for Halloween?
Salvador. The
Salvador.
It is Salvador.
Yeah.
And when I was
Are
having
you going to post the photos of that?
when I was having a fevered memory of this, I was like, I know it happened. I Googled Josh Jeffcoat. You can do this at home. Josh Jeffcoat Salvador costume. The only picture on the internet is on my website.
That's weird.
So I'm keeping that alive for the
Good.
world.
Thank you.
Anyone that wants to.
I won the Halloween costume contest that year.
It's good.
Yeah.
Of your video game themed cosplays,
It's definitely the best.
it's the better.
Better than Kratos.
It's the
But
better of the
it-
two.
it's Kratos was more memorable.
Yeah.
That's true.
But
and
Sal
sexual.
was so much better
He was
done.
far more sexual.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an actual question. There are two entirely separate big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle references in Borderlands 2. Does anyone know what they are?
Oh,
Side mission.
Yeah, with the tunnel rats.
Yeah. With
yeah.
Remember what it's called?
Oh God, no.
Oh, I don't know the name.
Splinter
of the mission.
Group.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
Good pun.
Whoever wrote that's great.
4 mutated raiders that you must kill are named Mick, Lee, Ralph, and Dan.
They originally had full dialogue grids where they would be like, excellent, and stuff like that. And we had to cut it because we were worried about getting sued.
Yeah, it was a little
Right,
too
yeah,
on the nose.
right.
Yeah.
And then, does anyone know the second? It involves Moxie's Bar. In Sanctuary, a pizza box can be found on one of the tables. Scanning the QR code on the box presents the following quote: "Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza."
I had no idea.
Which is a quote from the first Ninja Turtles movie, right? It's attributed in our game to Captain Picard.
Sure, why not?
So that's maybe something that you wrote without realizing it.
I definitely did not write that.
Yeah, that was in the area where like all of our artists were like, these are called QR codes, and we're like, nerds.
Our final feature of Echoes from the Borderlands is a contest. Josh, you've already played this once. You will play it again. You can do better. Is who does the best Marcus? And we're going to be saying, so you want to hear a podcast, huh?
I mean, I'll start this time because I basically
the
failed
fear in your
last time.
faces is beautiful.
Well,
to
it's
me.
only because I already bombed it once, so I can't really be.
Give me your
worse.
best one, Josh.
So you want to hear a podcast?
Okay, Anthony.
So, you want to hear a podcast?
Oh, that's the one to beat.
So you want to hear a podcast?
I'm going to give it to Anthony on this one.
Yeah.
Anthony, you go into the brackets. At the end of this entire series, we will crown a Marcus King.
Perfect.
You're in the running.
Great. Glad to be here. I'd like to thank my family.
You get
an honor.
you get a very old Marcus bobblehead that we have in the closet. That's been
yeah,
sitting
probably.
there
We
for
just have
12
like
years.
50 of those somewhere.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Vault Hunters. If you're a good listener, please subscribe to the audio version of Echoes from the Borderlands, wherever podcasts are available. If you're a good looker, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/GearboxOfficial, to see future episodes of this show. If you play video games, and who doesn't, and you'd like to get every current Borderlands game at one great price, go snag our new bundle, the Borderlands Collection Pandora's Box, available now on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Huge thanks to my guests Josh Jeffcoat, Anthony Birch, and Brian Thomas, as well as our behind-the-scenes heroes April Johnson, Dakota Warren, Matthew Ward, Mike Cosner, and Rob Fernandez. Our theme song is Get Out of My Head by Wandermine. For Echoes from the Borderlands, I'm Joel Watson. See you next time, Vault Hunters.